What if the history of our solar system, the story we were all taught in school, is a lie? We learn of a peaceful, orderly creation, a spinning nebula of dust and gas, slowly, gently, coalescing over millions of years. Tiny particles clumped together, growing into rocks, then planetesimals, then into the majestic planets we know today. It's a neat, tidy, and comforting story. But the universe is rarely neat and tidy. The evidence, hidden in plain sight across our own cosmic backyard, points to a very different past. A past of unimaginable violence, of shattered worlds, and of a cataclysm that has left scars we can still see today. This is the story of a war in heaven, a lost planet, and the terrifying possibility that our solar system is not a cradle of life, but a cosmic crime scene. The official story of planetary formation is called the accretion model. Leftover dust and gas from our young sun are said to have stuck together, like snowballs rolling downhill, gradually growing into planets. It sounds plausible, but when you look closely at the physics, the model begins to fall apart. The early solar system was a chaotic shooting gallery, with objects hurtling through space at speeds exceeding 40,000 miles per hour. At those velocities, collisions don't create larger objects. They obliterate them, smashing rocks back into dust. For particles to gently stick together in such a violent environment is, for many physicists, a statistical impossibility. Then there's the problem of the orbital plane. The sun's gravity pulls in all directions, so why do all the planets orbit on a single, flat disk, like marbles rolling on a plate? Random debris clumping together should have created orbits at all angles and inclinations. The neatness of our solar system is profoundly unnatural. Astronomers have also discovered hundreds of what they call hot Jupiters, massive gas giants orbiting their stars at scorching hot distances, closer than Mercury is to our sun. According to the Standard Model, this is impossible. Gas giants are supposed to form far out, beyond a frost line, where it's cold enough for their gases to condense. Yet, we have documented over 400 of them. The official model simply cannot explain their existence. These aren't minor inconsistencies. They are gaping holes in the story we've been told. And it was these very holes that led one of the world's top celestial mechanics to propose a radical, explosive alternative. Dr. Tom Van Flandern was not a fringe theorist. He held a PhD from Yale and spent 2 decades as the head of the celestial mechanics branch of the U.S. Naval Observatory. His job was to predict the precise positions of planets and satellites with stunning accuracy for military and navigational purposes. He was an expert's expert, and the more he studied the math, the more he realized the official story couldn't be true. So he revived an older, more explosive idea, solar fission. The theory posits that our sun, in its youth, was spinning incredibly fast, too fast to remain stable. To survive, it had to shed mass and energy, not gently, but violently. In a series of cataclysmic events, the sun flung off massive globules of superheated plasma, each one a nascent planet. Spinning away from their parent star, these fiery blobs cooled and condensed into the worlds we see today. This elegantly explained everything the accretion model couldn't. The planets orbit in a flat plane because they were all ejected from the sun's spinning equator. They possess the solar system's angular momentum because they carried it with them. Hot Jupiters exist because some planets simply didn't travel as far from their parent star. Van Flandern also noticed that planets seemed to be born in pairs. Earth and Venus, nearly identical in size. Jupiter and Saturn, both gas giants. Their orbital positions followed a distinct mathematical ratio, but some pieces of the puzzle didn't fit. Mercury's orbit was wrong, and then there was Mars. Mars was the real anomaly. Too small, wrong orbit, wrong density. It didn't fit any pattern. That's when Van Flandern reached a staggering conclusion. Mars was not originally a planet. It was a moon that once orbited a much larger world, a world that no longer exists. A world he believed was violently destroyed. And the evidence for this lost planet was hiding right between Mars and Jupiter. This is where the story gets truly fascinating. If you find your mind racing with these possibilities, and you crave a deeper understanding of the universe's greatest mysteries, do me a quick favor and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We unravel stories like this every week, and you won't want to miss the evidence we're about to uncover. Your support helps us challenge the conventional narrative and explore these incredible ideas together. Back in 1766, a German astronomer named Johann Titius discovered a strange mathematical pattern in the distances of the planets from the Sun. Later popularized by Johann Bode, the formula, now known as the Titius-Bode law, perfectly predicted the orbits of all 6 known planets at the time. But the law also predicted something else: the existence of a planet between Mars and Jupiter at a distance of 2.8 astronomical units from the Sun. Astronomers all over Europe began a frantic search. The excitement grew when Uranus was discovered in 1781, exactly where Bode's law predicted it would be. The formula worked. So where was the missing planet? On New Year's Day, 1801, an Italian astronomer found something, a small object, which he named Ceres, orbiting almost exactly where the lost world should be. But Ceres was tiny, smaller than the state of Texas. Soon, astronomers found more objects in the same region: Pallas, Vesta, Juno. Today, we know there are millions of rocks in that orbit. We call it the asteroid belt. Mainstream science suggests this is simply leftover material that failed to form a planet. But another German astronomer, Heinrich Olbers, proposed a darker theory. What if a planet did form there, and something blew it to pieces? He named this hypothetical world Phaeton, after the Greek god who lost control of the sun's chariot. When critics pointed out that the total mass of the asteroid belt is less than our own moon, proponents of the theory had a ready answer. An exploding planet wouldn't just neatly crumble. The vast majority of its mass would be vaporized, ejected from the solar system entirely, or pulled into the sun. The debris we see today, perhaps only a few % of the original planet, is exactly what you would expect to find in the aftermath of such a cataclysm. The math worked. The evidence was there. A massive planet once existed, and now it was gone. And Tom Van Flandern believed he could prove it. To prove a planet had exploded, Van Flandern needed a smoking gun. He found it by studying Soviet anti-satellite weapons tests from the 1980s. When the Soviets blew up their own satellites in orbit, American observers noticed something peculiar. The debris didn't just scatter. Smaller fragments began to orbit the larger pieces, forming tiny, temporary satellite systems. Van Flandern realized that if this happens with a small satellite, the same principle must apply on a planetary scale. When a planet explodes, mountain-sized chunks would fly off, trailed by clouds of smaller debris orbiting them. From Earth, these objects would look exactly like comets, a bright nucleus trailed by a dusty tail. But if his theory was right, some of these comets shouldn't just have dust tails, they should have actual, solid moons orbiting them. The scientific community scoffed. One prominent astronomer even made a public bet that no comet would ever be found with a companion. Then, in 1995, Comet Hale-Bopp appeared in our skies. It was one of the brightest comets in history. An amateur astronomer photographed it and saw a second, smaller bright object traveling alongside it, a companion. While that specific object was later dismissed as a background star, the controversy hid a deeper truth. Hale-Bopp was bizarre. It had multiple nuclei and a strange tail made of sodium, something you'd expect to find from the salt deposits of a shattered, water-rich planet. Then, the Galileo probe photographed the asteroid Ida and discovered it had its own tiny moon, Dactyl. When comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 slammed into Jupiter in 1994, it wasn't a single object. It was a string of 21 fragments flying in formation, like pearls on a broken necklace. Van Flandern was right. These weren't just random space rocks. They were the shrapnel of a planetary-scale disaster. And the biggest piece of evidence, a world scarred and wounded by this ancient event, was Mars. When Tom Van Flandern's work was combined with the research of scientific author Richard Hoagland, a complete and terrifying picture began to emerge. Both men saw that Mars behaved less like a planet and more like a traumatized moon. Its orbit is strangely elliptical. Its mass is far too small for its position. And the entire planet is a world of two halves, a feature known as the Martian dichotomy. The northern hemisphere is smooth and low-lying, bearing the hallmarks of ancient, dried ocean basins. The southern hemisphere is a battered, crater-pocked wasteland, with a crust that is inexplicably 20 miles thicker than the north. It's as if an entire layer of catastrophic debris was plastered onto one half of the planet. Even stranger, The southern hemisphere is estimated to be 2 billion years older than the northern one. This isn't erosion. This is the scar of a cataclysm. Then there are the tidal bulges. On one side of Mars sits Olympus Mons, the largest volcano in the solar system. It rests on a massive uplift called the Tharsis Bulge. Directly opposite it, 180 degrees around the planet, is another, similar uplift, the Arabia Terra. This symmetrical bulging is the classic sign of a moon being tidally locked to a large parent planet. The planet's immense gravity pulls on its moon, creating permanent bulges in the crust. We see this exact effect on Jupiter's and Saturn's moons. If Mars was once the moon of the great planet Maldek, or Phaeton, it would have been tidally locked. Its parent planet's gravity would have also pulled its oceans into a unique pattern. Two massive ocean systems, one in each hemisphere, grinding against each other at the equator. Over millions of years, this grinding would have carved an immense scar into the Martian surface. Today, we call that scar Valles Marineris, a canyon system so vast, it would make our Grand Canyon look like a tiny ditch. Mainstream science has no convincing explanation for its formation. But the theory of twin oceans, held in place by a lost parent planet, explains it perfectly. Together, these theories painted a picture of a living moon orbiting a living planet. And then, one day, it all ended in fire. The final, horrifying piece of the puzzle comes from plasma physicist Dr. John Brandenburg. While working on defense projects, he studied NASA's data on the Martian atmosphere and found something that chilled him to the bone: enormous, anomalous concentrations of the isotope xenon-129. Here on Earth, significant amounts of xenon-129 are produced by only one thing: nuclear fission. The concentrations on Mars were highest in two specific locations, including the Cydonia region, famous for the enigmatic face on Mars. The levels were more than double that of anywhere else in the solar system. According to Brandenburg, the only plausible explanation was a series of massive, airburst nuclear detonations in Mars's ancient past. These were not small bombs. These were planet-killing weapons, measured in megatons. He concluded that the civilization on Mars hadn't just died, it had been exterminated. Strangely, this theory was eerily foreshadowed decades earlier. In 1958, legendary comic book artist Jack Kirby, who often consulted with rocket scientists from Wernher von Braun's team, wrote a story called The Face on Mars. In it, astronauts discover that ancient Martians, a race of giants, were wiped out when a doomsday weapon they used against their enemies on a planet between Mars and Jupiter backfired, destroying the enemy planet but also stripping Mars of its atmosphere. The survivors carved the giant face as a final warning to the cosmos. An even more bizarre corroboration came from Project Stargate, the CIA's remote viewing program. When top psychic spy Joe McMoneagle was given a sealed envelope with coordinates and asked to describe what he saw, he described a dying civilization of very tall, thin humanoids on a world with pyramids and immense structures, under a dying sky. When he finished, he was given the envelope. The target was Mars. 1 million years BC. Was Kirby's story pure fiction? Was McMoneagle's vision a hallucination? Or were they both tapping into a terrible truth? Brandenburg believes the nuclear attack didn't come from the Martians themselves. He believes it was an attack from an external, hostile intelligence. Something or someone wanted Mars dead, and they succeeded. Now, a healthy dose of skepticism is required. The solar fission theory, while elegant, has never been directly observed. The exploded planet hypothesis struggles with the low mass of the asteroid belt, though Van Flanderen's calculations about debris dispersal offer a plausible counter. The xenon-129 on Mars could, critics argue, be the result of natural cosmic ray bombardment over billions of years on a planet with a weak magnetic shield. And the famous face on Mars, in higher resolution images, looks much more like a natural landform, a classic case of pareidolia. But the coincidences are staggering. The predictions that have been proven true are undeniable. Hoagland's prediction of salt deposits and ancient shorelines on Mars were confirmed by NASA probes years later. The anomalies in our solar system are real. Venus spins backward. Uranus is knocked on its side. The asteroid belt exists precisely where a planet should be. Mars is a world of two halves, bearing the scars of a catastrophe. Something violent and terrible happened in our past. The evidence is written in the very orbits and surfaces of the planets. The question isn't if our solar system was broken, but how, and by whom. Tom Van Flandern died in 2009, his theories largely dismissed by the scientific establishment that once celebrated him. But he saw a pattern that most refused to acknowledge. He believed two planets were destroyed. First Phaeton, or Planet V, whose destruction created the asteroid belt. Then a second planet, which he called Maldek, whose explosion flung its moon, Mars, into its current orbit, sent a shockwave that flipped Venus and peppered the outer planets with debris. Earth was lucky. We were far enough away to survive. This time. But here is the terrifying implication of his life's work. If it happened twice, it can happen again. We live in a habitable zone with two other planets, Venus and Mars. One is a scorched hellscape. The other is a frozen, irradiated graveyard. We sit in the middle, pretending we are special, that we are safe. We search the stars for intelligent life, desperate not to be alone. But perhaps the intelligence we seek was here all along. Perhaps they lived on Mars, or on Maldek, and built civilizations that rivaled our wildest dreams. And now, they are gone. Silenced. Perhaps the face on Mars isn't just a rock. Perhaps it is exactly what the psychics and the storytellers said it was, a tombstone. A monument to a murdered world. A final, desperate warning carved in stone that we are either unable or unwilling to read. The history of our solar system may not be one of gentle creation, but of a recurring cycle of destruction. Venus fell, Mars fell, and the math doesn't lie. The pattern is clear. We're just next in line.